Greetings all, Dr. X here, good to see ya. All right, today's video is all about how you write a cover letter when you're applying for university faculty jobs. It's so important to have the right cover letter to accompany your application materials for those university faculty positions, because that can be your introduction to the faculty and your way of getting an invitation for an interview. Okay, let me start by talking about the purpose of the cover letter. The purpose of the cover letter really is for you to give as much information as you can to the committee so they can select you for the interview. The cover letter introduces you to the faculty, and then the faculty make a decision about whether or not to invite you for the interview. So your whole purpose is to get the interview. Now, here's a couple of things for you to remember. The audience is the faculty. Yes, eventually a dean will see your cover letter and CV, a provost or a vice president will eventually see it, but initially it's the faculty that screen your application and make the decision about whether you get invited or not. So always remember, you're writing to the faculty when you write that cover letter. Provide the information, show your experience and how you see yourself meeting those requirements. The cover letter is an opportunity for you to tell your story why they should invite you to come to interview. All right, now let's talk about the content of the letter. So we'll start with the opening section. In the opening section, you should address your letter to the committee chair or to the search committee chair. You could say it, greetings search committee chair, dear chairperson. I'll give you an example here in a minute of what it should say, but always address it to the chair of the committee. And then in the opening paragraph, I'd like to include the position title. If you know the position number, if it's posted on the job site, put that up too. Where did you find out about the posting? And also, why are you applying? So I'm going to give you an example now of what an opening section looks like that contains all that information. So in this example, I've written, it's to a fake university. Okay, random university. I made that up. And it's for a random position, an assistant professor of history. But if you'll note, in this description or in this opening, I've included the name of the position and the position number, because sometimes the universities post more than one position and you want to make sure that your application gets put in the right pool. So that's why I always encourage people to put whatever the position number is if they see it. So anyway, this one goes, greetings search committee chair. Notice I've included the chair's information. Please accept this application letter for the assistant professor of history, number 12903. Position listed on random university employment website. As I explored the position announcement, I saw where my experience met the position qualifications. I believe I could be the ideal fit for this position. After reviewing this letter and the attached application materials, I hope you agree. So notice I've put all the information. I've greeted the committee chair. I've included the position name, the posting number, and I've started to tell them where I found it and why I'm applying for the position. That's a really strong way to start your cover letter. Now for this next section where I talk about the content, I'm breaking it up based on what type of position you might be applying for. There are 3 different types of positions at the university I'll cover. The first university faculty position is a postdoc or research-only position where research is required, little or no teaching. The second will be for a tenure-track position that requires both research and teaching. And then finally, a non-tenure-track position where teaching is required and research is either optional or not required at all. If you are applying for a postdoc, I'll cover that first. Postdoc are for those postdoctoral positions that are research only. So because of that, you're going to start with a section that's all about research. Now, I like to use headers because the headers help divide it up, and it, as a person that knows that the committee will be looking at different sections and looking for specific things, having those headers make a difference, but you write it the way that fits best with your writing style. So you're going to have a section, start off with your research. In the research section, include information about your dissertation research, information about any research studies that you've run, emphasize any research awards that you've gotten. Maybe your dissertation won an award. Make sure that you include that in that section. Even if you got an honorable mention for your dissertation or some research you've done, make sure you include that in that section as well. The next section should be about your grant work. Include all grants you've applied for and say whether or not they've been funded. Also, all grants you worked on with others, make sure to include those. The next section should be service. In the service area, you're going to tie all of your service back to your research or back to your research agenda. That just strengthens the case that you're making that you are a researcher and they should hire you as a postdoc in that. And finally, the final section I would include is about your teaching, making sure that you include any of the courses you've taught or mention that you were a teaching assistant, but I would have teaching go last. Now, if you are applying for a tenure-track faculty position, then the next sections of the content you'll include after your intro, after the opening section, then I want you to also start in with your research and scholarly activity as the next section. Now, again, I like to use headers to separate out the sections in my cover letters. It just makes it easier for the committee to review, but you write the way that is comfortable for you. Start with the section on research and scholarly activities. Make sure you include all publications. And for you, I want you to include your grant applications in this section. Next, talk about your teaching. Teaching is going to be part of what you do in a tenure-track position. And so you're going to talk about your teaching. Make sure you include your teaching philosophy or teaching ideology if it wasn't asked for as a separate document. Make sure you include that in the teaching section. And finally, you're going to talk about service. Now, in your case, I want you to tie your service back to your research agenda. Remember, your service should always tie back to your research agenda. You'll get masterful at that during the tenure and promotion process. Now, the last one I'll cover for those of you that are applying for non-tenure track positions, you're applying for a position that's about teaching, that focuses on teaching and doesn't have a research requirement to it, or a minimum amount of research is required. The next section after your opening, I'd like you to start writing about teaching. Write about classes you've taught, whether they're undergraduate, graduate, include the names of the courses that you've taught, include in this section your teaching philosophy if it wasn't asked for as a separate document. So you're going to focus your next section on teaching, and then after that, you talk about research and scholarly activity. That should include presentations, So just make sure you include all of that. If you have publications, go ahead and include those as well. All right, and then for your service section, I want you to tie your service back to your teaching philosophy and your classroom practices. Again, service should really follow along with whatever our research agendas are or what our teaching practices, classroom practices, and teaching philosophy are. So that's what you'll work on for your sections. Okay, so we've gotten all of our openings written, the content for the letters written, and now you have to close. So in your closing section, the way that you're going to end the letter is by thanking the committee for their review and then inviting them to call you for an interview. You thank them for all the work they've done, and then you invite them to call you so that you can get that interview. Remember, that's the whole point of the cover letter. Okay, so here's an example of a very brief closing that includes all of that information. Thank you and the committee members for taking the time to review my application materials. As you can see, my experience has certainly prepared me for the Assistant Professor of History position at Random University. If you feel the same, please contact me at 555-555-1212 to schedule an interview sincerely. And then your letter comes to a good and complete close. It contains the information thanking the committee, reminding them of the position you applied for, and giving them your phone number so they can invite you for that interview. Now, I have one final tip for you, just one final tip for you. Always include a working phone number with a professional message on it. And that way the committee can leave a message for you on your voicemail. Again, I cannot tell you how many positions people have missed out on because the phone number they listed was not the right phone number. Or if they did have it listed, you couldn't tell it was their phone because it didn't have their name on it. It didn't say you can leave a message. You don't want to run into those mistakes. So please listen to this final tip. Always include a working phone number and a place they can leave you a message on the voicemail. Okay, that's it for today. So before you leave, don't forget to subscribe and make sure you hit the like button so that this video gets pushed out to more people who need help writing those cover letters for university positions. I hope these tips help you to write a cover letter that gets you the ideal position for you. Thanks so much for watching. Good luck on your search and have a wonderful day.